This is a request for when we're sharing for the benefit of our virtual friends who may not be able to see us because the camera's focused on Flint. If you could just say your name before you share. That way people can gain some familiarity across time. So.
How was it to walk like that?
I loved it. I loved it.
Freedom.
And you get to notice your preferences because I'm so habituated to just,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I like to be outside. And yeah.
Yeah, it's such a nice day. Walking meditation outside would be great.
Mm-hmm.
I found myself just following Katie.
I have no clue.
Lovely,
That's the
thank
thing
you.
in our lives. We don't even notice that people are following us. It's the way we walk makes a difference.
I like the tuning to the whole room, like to feel where my body was in resonance with the movements others were making or whether it wasn't, just as a matter of noticing.
It's good to feel the resistance that I have in my body. No, I don't want to go back.
It's interesting to do something that you are accustomed to doing, like Sunny was saying, but then suddenly you get to have preference just a little bit, and how fast it goes. And it's interesting, isn't it? I'm going to read something that's just a couple of paragraphs long that I've adapted it to here. And it has a metaphor that has to do with traffic and potential accidents. So sorry about that, for those of you that are sensitive to that. Listen to the analogy you're making here. Enlightenment, awakening, according with everything, is found quite precisely within the traffic on I-35 or I-94. Those of you that live here, you know what I'm talking about, right? Not like the traffic on these busy highways. It's none other than the exact traffic. The skillful flowing together with others in complete moment-to-moment awareness is your best hope for preventing suffering for yourself and for others. On the freeway, your thoughts, plans, dreams, goals, your troubled childhood or big promotion do not matter one bit. The only thing that matters is the appropriate response, dynamically unfolding in harmony with the free flow of movement, form, sensation, perception, emotion, thoughts, and consciousness. It's an ongoing jazz ensemble improvisation. The one who cut you off, is he right or wrong? Is she good or bad? Are you furious or amused? None of that matters. The only thing that matters is your skillful responding and slowly and safely avoiding collisions with other drivers. And your awareness is especially necessary in meeting those who are hindered by non-awareness. Distractions are dangerous. Whether you are a CEO or student, tall, short, young, tired, driving a sports car, or a battered pickup truck, suffering from cancer or a broken heart, alone, or with 3 bickering kids in the back seat, on your way to work, to meet a lover, to pick up a few groceries, all irrelevant. In rain or ice, dark or blinding sun, the issues are the same. Blink and the laughing blonde girl next to you suffers a broken neck. Reach for something under the seat and spend the rest of your days in a wheelchair. Your absolute attention is required at every moment. And on a good day, the whole performance unfolds like a miraculous symphony of movement, color, sound, light, ease. and generosity. You may be even surprised by the dazzling wonder of wildflowers, the morning glow sunrise, shimmering leaves on golden trees. Or whether you're zipping along at 70 miles an hour, peering into the foggy night, watching for black eyes, or stuck in bumper-to-bumper rush hour traffic. Enlightenment is just this. The rest of life is also like this. Our habits of mind are like a magic act. When we go to see a magician, we know we're being tricked, but the illusions can be so compelling and convincing. We become enthralled by what we think we're seeing. It appears that the woman is actually being sawed in half, right in front of our eyes. Inexplicably, the huge four-wheel drive pickup truck disappears into thin air. The plump rabbit is actually being pulled out of an empty hat, and a flock of white pigeons explodes out of a silk scarf, which was, only moments before, tucked neatly into a vest pocket. It's as if we can't see these events in any other way. This is what makes them so fascinating. The problem in our everyday life is these illusions become delusions. The tricks are so often mistaken for truth that we operate on these illusory truths as if they were real. We end up betting our lives on illusion and ignoring the truth, which could, as they say, actually set us free. Sitting practice and self-study is like going backstage and having the magician show us how the illusion was created. Every illusion can be seen through, and once seen through, we're no longer fooled. The sleight of hand is obvious, and the deception eliminated. It has all been brought into the light of awareness, literally in light. That is kind of an interesting analogy. It's all here all the time, right in the middle of everything that we're involved in. There's a small poem in your handout. I think I put in your handout. From Dongshan.
What is it called?
It's a tiny little poem, 4 lines attributed to Dongshan. It may be right at the top of your handout on poetry or something.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's the right after the first little box.
It's on the Koan of your life.
That handout, right under the first box. Yeah, it's on that one, yeah. And Dongshan, by the way, is Jeff Van Tozon, who wrote the song of the Jewel of Mirror Samadhi, which I mentioned. So there's 4 lines. Would you read it?
For whom do you bathe and make yourself beautiful? The voice of the cuckoo is calling you home. Hundreds of flowers fall, but her cry never ends. Still clear, even in the wildest mountains.
It should echo it. Hear it again. It's just, so we can get it in our bodies. Hear it again.
For whom do you bathe and make yourself beautiful? The voice of the cuckoo is calling you home. Hundreds of flowers fall, but her cry never ends. Still clear, even in the wildest mountains.
I just wanted you to read it again because it's so beautiful coming through you. You think?
Yes.
You know, this is from a longer Chinese poem about the journey home. And then home itself. And it's about honoring things. And honoring things is a really good place to start. And it's the essence of the Jukai ceremony, which will follow shortly. Finding home by honoring this as home. The Bodhisattva vows and the path of the precepts. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Jukai is a Japanese word which is used to name the ceremony that we'll be engaging in, and which the participants formally take the precepts as the sort of architecture and guiding force in their life. Everyone can study the precepts. Everyone can, they're free to take them. So they're not special in that way. But sometimes in this ceremony, after having done some preparatory work of study and sewing, sometimes people like to formally commit to this life of practice. Not as clergy necessarily, but to say, you know, this is it. And it's sort of like you've been practicing for a long time and you know you're going to keep practicing, that doesn't have to change. But it's like the difference between living together and getting married. It's like, oh, we're going to do the ceremony. And there's actually going to be a marriage certificate. There's going to be a document called a Kichimiyaku, which I'll talk about also in a bit, which is lineage of male teachers to female teachers, their own lineage, which says, oh, this is where I'm situated in this practice, and I want to take my place in it. Even talking about it has an impact. Yeah. So the ceremony will be self-explanatory as we do it, but you'll see. And I will tell you just ahead of time, and you'll see some people with the blue rakusus on. That color suggests that they are lay folks who have taken this ceremony. And they sewed these, or someone helped them sew it, and then they gave them to me. And on the back, it was white silk, blank. And then I defaced them and put things on there, which you'll be able to see as the new folks. Just for a larger thing, the green rakusu suggests that she has lay entrustment and transmission as a lay teacher, not a priest. It's the same equal, just a different branch line. This brown one, if I was a newly ordained priest, it would be black. The brown one suggests I've had Dharma transmission, which is from a fully ordained priest, I guess you call it. And I can do things like the Jukai ceremony. Like yesterday when I suggested she lead service, and she said, oh, my teacher suggested I not do that. I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. So there's some things that we honor in tradition. They're not, you know, there's no Zen police around. When it makes sense, then we honor that. So that's just a little kind of background for what this is. I think you've probably noticed that we enter study and practice with koans through the door of our own lives. And we've attempted to do that in all the different ways that each person has brought forward. And that entry, you know, you can hear or feel a call, and you decide maybe to step through the door. It's an intimation of the light wanting to express itself through our embodied existence. And sometimes we make preparations, like we'll do sewing or we'll do a class or a retreat, based on faith. We're not sure And the faith that we've said this so many times, but it's worth repeating because it's so persistent. A faith that's not based on the fact that we're going to receive something special, but there's something that's going to receive us. If we make ourselves ready. And that's the powerful. That's what we do in retreat. We're making ourselves ready, and what we do in study of the precepts and things like summoning practice. We make ourselves ready to be received. And then, and one of we chanted the longer meal verse in the monastic one. There's a line that says, no giver, no receiver, no gift. So that receiving and offering thing begins to fall apart, like you have begun to feel. And when we began to understand that it's enlightenment or awakening that calls us to practice, we're not called to practice to finally someday find enlightenment or awakening. This is said in the very first part of the ceremony, and almost the first line. It says, in faith that we are Buddha, we enter Buddha's way. Wait, what? Not in faith that if we practice our butt off for our whole life, we might end up. No, in faith that we are Buddha. That's the entrance to Buddha's way. The first line of the poem. Read the first line. Can I keep using it like this? Just the first line.
For whom do you bathe and make yourself beautiful?
Bathed, attended to, washed free of complications and conditioning. And then aspiring to the deepest kind of beauty, really. A beauty that's deeper than what's on the surface. To be receptive, to be brave, to be dedicated, open-hearted. As you can have your own list, I'm just naming a few things, but as we do, we start looking like the thing we're looking for. We literally bathe and prepare for the ceremony too. That's why I said, spiff up a bit, And I can tell you that at San Francisco Zen Center in the old days, they would ask us, they said, buy new underwear. Literally. Made new, start fresh. Which is a silly thing in a way, but it was symbolic.
We washed ours.
Yeah. Hey, then make yourself beautiful. But it's like our practice. Who are we doing this for? Who are we trying to make ourselves into something for? And then here's maybe the most important point, which keeps coming up over and over here in this Sangha, of course. You don't have to make this journey happen, and you don't have to do it alone. I think the theme has been made clear. But we do have to listen and pay attention. Because home is the thing that's already calling you. That's what it's called. Second line.
The voice of the cuckoo is calling you home.
And I think in this older literature, the sound of the cuckoo had a special kind of meaning. But even so, I think it's saying listen deeply and listen broadly. Listen to your inmost requests and listen to the cries of the world equally. Listen. The voice of the cuckoo, there's a voice that's calling you. And then the next line.
Hundreds of flowers fall, but her cry never ends.
Hundreds of flowers fall, but her cry never ends. Flowers do fall. They end up shriveling and falling away, which is a way that in these cultures, ancients would, it's one of the ways that they would say that time passes. You know, but the call doesn't stop, even though time passes. And even in the mixed up whatever wildness of your own life, in the most confused and lost times, and a lot of us have demonstrated that. You know, the stuff that you didn't want to be seen. The call is clear if you can listen to it in the midst of that. And the next line, still.
Still clear, even in the wildest mountains.
Even in the wildest mountains, it's still clear if you listen. That's why we practice, so we can learn to listen and not miss it. And there's an interesting thing I found out. This is kind of weird, but it's one of those ancient images. In the Chinese legends, the cuckoo would call until her throat would bleed, and that's the turn the azaleas red.
Oh.
I love it. But what is that symbolizing, you know? That we keep following and keep inviting each other. That call and response, it's what makes the world. Literally, it makes the world. Turns the azaleas red. Way to honor the mystery of the world's persistence on our behalf with affectionate awareness, affectionate presence, is by hearing it and responding. So I just wanted to go through those lines. Let's hear it one last time then.
For whom do you bathe and make yourself beautiful? The voice of the cuckoo is calling you home. Hundreds of flowers fall, but her cry never ends. Still clear, even in the wildest mountains.
A beautiful little piece, isn't it? You know, once we began to understand some of the references and what they, because Koan's like all good literature and good poetry are like condensed versions that connect us to this larger life. I've thought recently, I'm kind of tired of reading the Buddhist stuff and the Zen stuff, you know, but when I read really good novels, it's like it's all there. You know, really great literature and poetry, of course. And if we're fortunate and we practice wholeheartedly, we become more permeable to the joys and to the sorrows of life, which is what I think good literature and poetry and these koans do. Permeable to the ways we are continually shaped. Here's that word again. The way we're shaped by and the way we contribute to the collective dream of the world. This is a collective dream. Permeable to the primordial mystery we glimpse behind the veil of the everyday. Still clear even in the wildest mountains. You were talking earlier about the line, which I'm sure almost all of you are familiar with, in a segment in Letters to a Young Poet, because it's so often used, about when the Rilke is saying to the young man, you know, I can't answer your question because you couldn't live it. And the challenge is to live the question. To live it, and then you'll live your way into understanding. That's what the koans are about. It's like the smart aleck answer my teacher gave me when I went to him once, and he said, "Oh, that's such a good question to be ashamed to answer it. Stay with it." And this turn toward life, always turning toward life, rather than away from it, is characterized by the ways the Buddhist teachings that way of looking at things was a way that the Buddhist teachings changed as it went along the Silk Road into China. Because in India and on into Japan and Korea, and now other parts of the world, because in India it was much more about trying to get out of and transcend and shape ourselves in a quite different way. But this turn right into life was characterized by how Buddhism took a new shape when it met with Taoism and some of the other teachings. And that process began about 2,000 years ago. And for centuries, up until today, right here, what you were doing. And in the process, the teachings began to have less of a, maybe a religiosity, certainly not an esoteric sense, but a flavor of everydayness. Even with the things that seem remote or distant, like when you begin to enact these things, or each person you need brought it into, and not only were the teachings grounded in Chan and Zen and everydayness, but at the very same time, they were expressing a transcendent beauty. This sort of two sides of things, the everydayness and the transcendent beauty. Ordinary or holy, sublime or mundane. Remember Liz embodying and thinking about the apparent and yet maybe distinctions, which are really not so separate as we imagine. We all enacted that. And at the end of the Jukai ceremony, we're going to invoke a chant. And the very last line is one with the heart and mind of Buddha. Like the end of the ceremony is that we're one, the heart and mind of Buddha. And the Indian ascetics, however you say it, ascetics, not aesthetics, that's different, sought the extinction of suffering and striving towards nirvana. And Chan's shift in emphasis from practices which were trying to pacify and clarify and cultivate certain special states and trying to get the mind to be free. What Chan did was shift it towards letting the heart, mind, and the body actualize the inherent qualities of the natural state. And this takes a bit of courage and commitment, as you have demonstrated. And in broad terms, it means, this is the part that sometimes we're like, oh no, like Marla was saying and some others. Because it means dismantling anything and everything that interposes itself between you and intimacy with the rest of the world. Just that. Well, that's a strong statement, right? It means dismantling anything and everything that interposes itself between you and intimacy with the rest of the world. And the belief that a truly free heart and mind will be a responsive and generous one. All the while totally immersed in the causes and conditions of the world, but not distracted or caught by them. This is Joe's thoughts and what Chris was showing us. We chant, Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to embody it. We vow to, this vow body embodies it. The last one. By the way, that last recitation is I, we, and then this vow does it. It's really startling every time I chant it. And that last line, Buddha's way is unsurpassable. This vow embodies it. This is Jukai. This is the enactment as best we can using the Bodhisattva precepts of the scaffold. Now, I've spoken a little bit about being really inside the Zen tradition and also being somewhat outside the Zen tradition throughout my training and teaching. And Ava's spoken about a bit of her journey back and forth. You've talked about it. You know, he was with a Korean teacher too. So I can't speak for any of you or certainly Ava, but you know, we wear these robes with as much humility and integrity as we can manage. Not as a badge of authority, although it's a distinguishing symbol. So, and not certainly some fancy religious garment. Oh, they're nice. You know. Here's a reflection I found from Joan Sutherland, another Zen teacher, which I referenced earlier. And the first line resonates so deeply in me, it might resonate with you too, but we heard it from Becky yesterday. So listen to the first, here's the first line. I've been outside the halls of mainstream Western Zen for a long time, focusing on this labor of love, unexpected and inevitable, which came to fetch me. Isn't that great? I've been outside the halls of mainstream Western Zen for a long time, focusing on this labor of love. Can you tell? Unexpected and inevitable that came to fetch me. And Zen is an unfinished koan. Our practice is an unfinished koan. As she says, as Japanese teacher Hakuin Higaku, you were just reading Hakuin, right? Said, I've come to trust that we, she says, I've come to trust that we, like previous generations, have something refreshing and enlarging to bring to the tradition. That's what we're doing. This is not usual. Our ideals of egalitarianism and inclusion and the voices that are heard when we embody those ideals, part of what we're bringing. Our landscapes and poetries, the way we dream, they shape our courage. And this particular shape, our courage and kindness take the ways we are fierce and the ways that we are tender. Takes those kinds of shapes. And this is, to me, kind of a stunning summary of the last few days. I've put another quote, by the way, I think in your list of quotes there from the Genjo Koan. Right. And this, the Genjo Koan, I think we actually did a retreat, didn't we? Yeah, we did. And, you know, it's longer. This is just a small piece.
The whole thing is in your chant book if you ever want it, but not right
Oh, yeah. And here's a little bit of history, secret. It's funny. The Genjo Koan was a letter that Dogen wrote to one of his students. It was an email. What? This wasn't something he wrote in the Dharma hall or put in because he wanted to, you know, write some. This was like something he wrote to a student. I say an email because that's how we would do it, you know. And this is some of what's in it. When you find your way, there's some misspellings in here. When you find your way, at the moment, practice occurs, actualizing the fundamental point. So the place, the way is neither large nor small, neither yours nor others. The place, the way has not carried over from the past, and it's not merely arising now. Accordingly, in the practice enlightenment, one word, practice enlightenment. Practice is the expression of enlightenment. In the practice enlightenment of the Buddha way, leading one thing is mastering it. Doing one practice is practicing completely. Why do we say, do the vow fully? Do each thing fully. Doing one thing, practicing completely. Here is the place. Here the way unfolds, even on the highway, like I mentioned. The boundary of realization is not distinct. For the realization comes forth simultaneously with the mastery of Buddha Dharma. The effort and the response are the same thing. Do not suppose that what you realize becomes your knowledge and is grasped by your consciousness, Flint. On the back of my black rocket suit, not this one, that I sewed for my ordination, things are written on here, and what Blanche wrote on it, besides all the other stuff she has to write on it, was a piece from Dogen. Realization, neither general nor specific, is effort without desire.
Without the what?
Without desire. Effort without desire. Do not suppose that what you realize becomes your knowledge and is grasped by your consciousness. Although actualized immediately, the inconceivable may not be apparent. It may take 30 years. Its appearance is beyond your knowledge. Its appearance is beyond your knowledge. It can appear immediately, but that's not because you can think of it. It's immediate. And once again, Mal Weissman, and remember the title of the book came from that, a quote from Suzuki Roshi, seeing one thing through to the end. He says what Dogen woke up to was that although Buddha Dharma is our essential nature, if we don't do something to bring it forth, it doesn't manifest as realization. What he woke up to was that although Buddha nature is our essential nature, it's ordinary mind, if we don't do something to bring it forward, it doesn't manifest as realization. It doesn't show up in the world in wakefulness. So we're practicing so it'll show up in the world, not so we're not creating it because it's uncreated. For us, humans, Buddha nature manifests as human nature. Is a fully functioning human. Some of you have heard the little funny story that Uchi Amarochi, who was a great teacher, some of you probably read Opening the Hand of Thought. A Western student, he could speak some English, Western student asked him one time, what is a bodhisattva? The kind of question that you know the answer to, but you want to know what the guy's going to say. And Uchiyama said in his broken English, oh, I think a grown-up. A mature human being. And that's some weird thing. And that's what the Jukai ceremony is about. It's saying, I have a path here that I've been given from the ancestors that I am vowing to follow, which is the path of maturity. Growing up and waking up. The double helix of maturity, not just cognitive maturing or emotional, not just spiritual element. It's like this double helix of growing up and waking up.
So it doesn't mean we're mature, it means we're committed to maturing.
Being it. Because that's an ongoing process. That's why the vows are unending. Dogen understood that realization stimulates practice. This is Mel. Realization stimulates practice, the life quote. And practice sustains realization. Realization, awakefulness stimulates us to practice, calls us to practice, and practice sustains that light. A moment of practice, every moment of practice is a moment of awakening. Not that your mind changes it. Every practice has done one thing completely. And we chant this stuff, you know, Buddhas and ancestors of old were as we in the future shall be Buddhas and ancestors. Revering Buddhas and ancestors. We're one Buddha and one ancestor. Awakening Bodhi mind, we're one Bodhi mind. We're one Seijo. And then he also says because they, the ancestors, extend their compassion to us freely and without limit. And we do those dedications. And I bow, and you bow. Because they extend their compassion to us freely and without limit, we're able to enter Buddhahood and let go of the attainment. There are things that we feel like we attain in a certain way, but then we let go of it. I don't remember what we saw. What?
Oh,
3 to 3, okay. Is that okay if I go on?
Please.
Because I wanted to say a couple things about the Heart Sutra and about emptiness. I don't think I'm changing gears here, even though it seems like it a little bit. John Tarrant referenced a couple times. I like his use of language quite a bit. And he wrote an article for Tricycle one time, and it was about the Heart Sutra. And the title was The Erotic Life of Emptiness.
Yeah.
See, everybody read that one. Subtitle, We Are the World Unfolding. So we chant, form is no other than boundlessness, boundlessness is no other than form. And the more classical translation says, form is no other than emptiness, emptiness is no other form. Basically saying they're not, you know, separate things. That this great existence here is form, but these forms only come together because of every single thing in the entire universe and throughout space and time, which is the great, vast, interdependent emptiness. What emptiness suggests is it's empty of individuality because it's all our boundlessness. And so we're saying, oh, this is because of boundlessness. And how do you know boundlessness? Form. And so,
Flint, I wanted to share with folks who might not be familiar, what Flint is referring to as the Heart Sutra is one of the chants we've been chanting in our
has a different
services
name.
that goes by the name the Sutra on the heart of realizing wisdom beyond wisdom. So it's talking about the stuff we haven't chanted.
It's a small piece, the heart, the big Paramita Sutra that is chanted. I can guarantee you this. Anytime, at any moment, through the 24 hours, somebody's chanting the Heart Sutra.
Yeah.
Somebody somewhere is chanting it around the world. It goes on and on and on. And so we chant this thing, and it's a little bit obscure, like form's emptiness, emptiness form. There are no walls in the heart mind. There are no walls on your heart and mind that they're talking about. That's what we're talking about. And the discovery of boundlessness, when you really open to it, and you've seen people this week, this month, wherever we've been, have moments. It's kind of like falling in love, right? Falling into love, like I talked about yesterday. we've been enacting. And there's kind of a vertigo that goes with it. Have you noticed? And this is the kind of thing that you might feel in the midst of the ceremony. It's kind of a little bit like stepping off a cliff of what we know and thought we were certain about. It's like those of you that have done the ceremony, how much of it do you remember? That's crazy. You were in there, you were doing it, you were involved in it, you were embodied. Was it powerful?
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you remember it? No, because it's like, it's interesting. I'm not trying to set something up. It's just ceremonies like this. They're kind of curious. Now, Emily helped us with this starting off because you notice that these kinds of things that people can bring, and a lot of times as a teacher, people will bring stuff like this, like a flower or a bird's nest or, some little things, and they put them on the altar. But after a while, I started thinking, I thought I was a man, but maybe I'm the flower. You start having these weird, or we just went to lunch, and there was this interesting androgynous young man. I think maybe, but I felt like him. Or you go and the checkout girl with the nose piercing and the multiple tattoos, and you see, oh, that's me. Not one tiny bit different. Or the little girl in the corner we just saw who was like this tall, and she had a doll in each hand. She was waving it. And you were her.
Oh yeah. And I wanted to take her home.
And this is a embodied, non-intellectual. Yeah, we could have had a problem with police. It's just a way of saying that Buddha nature is everywhere and in everything. And if you pay attention, you notice it. It starts to be, it's like, it's not an idea, it's just true. Because the next realization is not like, oh, I'm kind of like that guy or that girl, or I'm like that tree or that maple leaf I found on the street a while ago. I am that. Not just I'm like it. And it's a little bit like the erotic part that we were mentioning, a falling in love quality comes from, you kind of notice you're not on the outside of the world anymore watching. Listening, feeling, you realize yourself as the world unfolding. And then when you look around, you just see evidence of it, like how eager Lucy is when we come home. Bill cat. And each morning this week, we go on the same streets, and the leaves are different because this week they're really changing. Or you see the homeless person on the side of the street somewhere in St. Paul, or the toddler on the plane looking through the crack behind this, the seat and flirting. And that kind of a vertigo or disorientation is a natural reaction to this shift when there's not so much separation. And maybe if we keep on with the airplane metaphor, a bit of turbulence. In the largest sense, but maybe also most ordinary sense, we begin to get this sense that I thought I knew who I was, but I'm not so sure, but not in the psychological way. It's not like who I thought I was, what I thought I was, what this is. And the koans we've used and others, it's not necessary that you study koans, but they're just little stories, little moments of discovering of emptiness, boundlessness, and the embodiment of boundlessness. And I like to imagine that the template for this kind of discovery is simply being, no, it's not that. It's simply having a more naked meeting with the world. We continue our lives, it's like less. Because you know your lover will take off their clothes and you stretch out alongside them and you both become lost. It's not hard to feel like one. I think that's what he was talking about. And the point is that there is absolutely no good reason to love this crazy world or each other. It's a mess, isn't it? And yet we do. And generosity helps. That curiosity keeps us coming back. And moment after moment, breath after breath. And we discover sometimes it's only like a whisper in the dark or the lightest touch. But we begin to feel, despite everything we think, this natural kind of empathy for the world. And everything, like us, has the audacity and the courage to take shape in the world, to actually be here. And our inquiry helps us, it reminds us of this, because every time someone comes up, we take that shape and be that flexible. So taking the precepts and the Bodhisattva vow, so in the Rakasu, this small version of the Okesa, of the robe, is an expression of this kind of love and devotion. It's said that this little traditional stuff here, the Kesa, see this patchwork thing, the little square here, is a small version of the ones, you know, the big ones. Is what all Buddhas revere and devote themselves to. It's thought of as the body of the Buddha. Joshin-san, who was the Japanese woman who taught Blanche, was her primary teacher for sewing. Someone was talking to her about this wealthy gentleman who collected antique cases and brocades and beautiful old ones, and he had like a bunch of them. She went nuts. How dare every single one of those cases is the entire body of the Buddha. How do they collect them like objects? Heart and mind of Buddha. We say vast is the robe of liberation. The classic English part of the great robe of liberation, field far beyond form and emptiness, wearing the Tathagata's teaching, saving all beings. That's the translation of in Japanese. We chant it, you know. It's called the garment of liberation, the robe. I'm going to read some of these. The robe that is a fertile field of blessings, the formless robe, the unsurpassable robe, the robe of patient forbearance, the robe of the Tathagata, the robe of great benevolence and great compassion, the robe that is the banner of victory. Sounds a little Christian. And it's called the robe of supreme, fully perfected enlightenment. But in these ways, we learn to accept it, keep it, and to humbly raise it above our heads. You notice when we do the robe chant, put it on your head. putting it as the highest place. So when these things are stored, you don't put them on the floor, you don't put them on the ground, you kind of keep them up a little bit. So you have to put them on the floor because it's something you put something to them. When you pack, you have to put it on the top. It's sort of like when I'm bowing, notice I raise my hands. Like I'm raising the feet of the Buddha above my head. So I think that's enough, maybe. I will. Here's the last joke. It comes from the Koans. Case 30 of the Momo Koan. Oh, mind is Buddha. Case. Hi, guy. This is just one of the guys. Whatever. Asked Basho in all earnestness, what is Buddha? Basho answered, this very mind is Buddha. Similar. That's case 30. Case 33. Remember Basho that said that? A monk asked Basho in all earnestness, what is Buddha? Basho replied, no mind, no Buddha. Wait a minute. And by the way, a monk asked Joshu about the dog. Does the dog have Buddha nature? He said, moo. Another time he said, sure.
Cuckoo part.
What?
Would you take?
Yes. I'm going to say one more and then we'll take questions. Because I don't want to go through all these, you've done enough. But here's the other one I really love. And it's case 32. It comes between those two, where you seemingly opposite answer. I'm going to read the verse, though, that goes with the first one. It's, what is Buddha? Baso says, this very mind is Buddha. You know, you can work with that pretty easily. Here's the verse. Blue sky, the bright day. It is most detestable to hunt around. If furthermore you ask, what is Buddha? It's like shouting your innocence while holding the lute. I'm a thief. Here's a little bit of Mumon's commentary. I will read this. It's funny. If you grasp it on the spot, you wear Buddha's clothes.
Oh,
Eat Buddha's food. Speak Buddha's words. Do Buddha's deeds. You are Buddha herself. Though this may be so, Taibi, the guy who asked, has also misled not only a few people into mistaking the mark on the balance of the weight itself. How can he realize that even the mere mention of the word Buddha should make a person rinse their mouth for 3 days? If one is such a person, and hear someone say, the very mind is Buddha, he will cover his ears and run away. Don't get caught. Don't get caught. And then the other one about no mind, no Buddha, the same question. Here's the commentary. If you can see into what was said here, your study is at an end. But here's the verse. If you meet a swordman, you may present a sword. You should not offer a poem unless you meet a poet. When you speak to others, say only 3/4 of it. You should never give the remaining part.
what was the last sentence?
Oh, that's how this works.
What was the last sentence?
If you meet a swordsman, you present a sword. You should not offer a poem unless you meet a poet. In other words, meet people. When you speak to others, say only 3/4 of it. Sorry. You should never give the remaining part. What?
You're just so cute. You're like having the time of your life right now. You know what I
So here's the third one.
mean? I know. I love it. Carry on.
The name of case 32 in the Gateless Gate is a non-Buddhist questions the Buddha. You ask it, we ask the non-Buddhist. Okay, here's the case. A non-Buddhist once asked the world-honored one. This person is very bright, even though they're the non-Buddhist. I do not ask for words. I do not ask for non-words. The Buddha just sat there. The non-Buddhist praised him, saying, the great compassion of the world honored one has blown away the clouds of my illusion and enabled me to enter the way. After making a vow of gratitude, he took his leave. Then Ananda asked the Buddha, what did he realize to admire you so much? And the world honored one replied, a fine horse runs even at the shadow of a whip. Mumon's commentary. Ananda was the Buddhist disciple, but his understanding was not equal to that of the non-Buddhist. I want to ask you, what difference is there between the Buddhist disciple and a non-Buddhist? Here's the poem. He walks along the edge of a sword, then runs over the sharp ridges of an iceberg. You need take no steps. Let go of your hold on the cliff.
Say the last line
Let
again.
go of your hold on the cliff.
Can you say the last line again?
That was it. He walks along the edge of a sword and runs over the sharp ridges of an iceberg. You need take no steps. Let go your hold on the cliff. I'll just leave you with these. Yeah, I love that. What is Buddha? Just mine. What any other Buddha? Oh, no mind, no Buddha. And then this non-Buddhist comes in and it's very, very clear. Like, you're not going to tell me words because I'm not going to believe it, but you can't say, no words, that's not going to work either. And the Buddha's like, and the non-Buddhist says, yes. Anything else to say for yourself?
I didn't get the one about the loot, like you're holding the loot or like the treasure. You said something and then you giggled really hard inside. I'm like, we should get a tattoo with that one, whatever that one was. That's the one.
Here.
Yeah, like what?
What?
You said
Claiming you're holding the loot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that one?
taking instance while
Blue
holding
sky,
the
right
loot.
day.
Is that it?
It's most detestable to hunt around.
Uh-huh.
Everything's just fine. Why are you going to go searching?
Uh-huh.
If, furthermore, you ask, what is Buddha?
Uh-huh.
It's like shouting your innocence while holding the loot. It's like if you're asking, what is Buddha?
Uh-huh.
When you are that, it's like shouting, I'm no thief, and you're holding the stuff you're running off with, you're stolen. It's like, dude, you're that.
Cool. I like it. Yeah.
Because if it's not funny, it's just not any fun. Get that tattoo.
I know. I'm like writing them all down right now. Yeah.
I keep coming back to we got to have the cap. You know the cap that I want to have? We have to have swag.
Oh.
So the cap, and you have to do the art because you are good at this.
I'm on it.
In a kind of that cartoonish way,
Mhm.
You with a question mark and an exclamation mark, it would be oh. Or oh. And then on the back, we're smaller usually, they have the thing. We'll say, well, now this.
Yes.
Oh, now this.
That's how we'll identify each other in the crowd and be like, oh, see you, girl.
They sell like hotcakes at Target.
We'll have a merch table next retreat.
We're doing
15 minutes till the break.
15 until the break. And then we have ceremonies.
And we'll set up for that ceremony.
Yeah. So are there any questions for real? I mean, that was a real question. But
I don't know what you mean.
your question. It may not be, it's okay, it's just,
I have questions about koans, but I don't know if now's the time.
well, let's see.
Okay, yeah, and if it's not, just let me know. So I always think about their impact and how they work inside and all that, but I never think about how they're constructed for some reason. So, you know, like I design games. So I was thinking about how we often design games to like break people's brains on purpose. So it's a little like that. So then I was like, oh, do the koans that make it into the canon, like, are they just spitballing and see what happens? Like, are they testing them on students? Like, how do they come to formation?
None of them are made.
What do you
Just
mean?
recordings of things that happened.
Are you tricking me?
No, most of them are, I mean, that's why there are people involved and they're saying what happened there. That's when they say they're public case, that's what it means.
Yeah.
They're recordings of something that happened.
Well, like hers had a split soul, or like, you know.
Yeah, that was an unusual one. It just had a story behind it. And so I don't know who made up that story. Maybe they did construct that. But
Okay.
most of them aren't like constructed to mess with you.
Uh-huh.
They may be teaching stories
Mm-hmm.
along with that, which maybe accord with the kind of thing you're asking about. But most of the classic ones aren't. They're just
They're like,
stories of something that happened that they get passed on, and sure, I'm sure they get
like,
elaborated and changed and spiffed up and made.
but like they would not, if they didn't have a profundity or confusing paradoxical nature, they wouldn't survive over time, right? So
Profundity. Yeah, maybe paradoxical. They're not set up to confound you.
uh-huh.
And once you become connected with the koan, they just seem kind of like obvious, not as an answer. They're just like a story.
And they become obvious to you?
Like these have.
Yeah,
Not
there was one
obvious,
that felt
it's
obvious, but only one. Yeah. The rest of them really
stories, and
were
they're
disorienting.
most of these, of course, are outside of our cultural context, which
Mhm. Mhm.
and so they have references that are somewhat difficult, and maybe they're poetic and maybe they're strange.
Oh.
But they're meant to take you beyond. That's why I started with ordinary mind, because
Mhm.
it says, you know, if you try to understand it this way, if you don't understand it that way, it's not about that. It's about stepping further.
Oh, so
It's not to guide
So-
you to think a certain way. It's to guide you beyond your thinking.
uh-huh. So that's not so okay, so I guess I'm saying, like, when I say confound, I guess I mean temporarily make you so like uncomfortable as productive. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you perturb the system enough that you start to
Yeah.
fall apart.
Yeah. That's the purpose of them. Or like a purpose.
Yeah,
And
I
then-
was in a training one time in which we were given, I think 5 or 7, I can't remember words,
Mhm.
specific words, and we were in a group of maybe 6 or 8, I think. And then there were people who came around that were like the leader people, and they were like the Zen teacher. So we as a group had to figure out some way to enact an expression of what that word meant, that they would get it. And they knew what the words were,
Mhm.
but they didn't know. And we couldn't just do some sort of pantomime or some weird thing,
Mhm.
like we were talking about at lunch. You can't do it
Like
literally,
charade it.
Chris, you know, where, yeah, you get the right answer, but there's no spirit in it. You gotta, and literally we started at like 6 or 7 in the evening and went until the next morning
Mhm. Mhm.
trying to, and then people come and they go, no, till we were able to. It was weird.
Until you were able to finish.
They could see that you
grok
got the essence of that word.
Yeah, okay, so then that's so confusing then, because then you're saying there is a grokking, that there's an
In that
intentional
situation,
grokking
Yeah, there is a grokking of something.
of something, but not a thing, of many somethings.
In a non-ordinary way.
Okay, that's helpful.
It reminds me of, if you've ever read Louise Erdrich,
Mhm.
she walks many dimensions and how she understands the world.
Mhm.
And it's, there's so many literal layers and
Mhm.
there's psychological layers and there's magical, mythical layers, and they're all real.
Mhm.
And they interweave with one another. And you read her work and you're like, no, wait, no. And you're like, yep, just immerse yourself in it.
and then you get it.
That's the thing, it's the immersion, that's all.
Son,
Yeah.
when I had a different teacher, Korean teacher, and was working with koans. And actually got to work with several teachers, men and women in that particular branch. It's really nice. Koan work with all of them. But one or a couple said to me, oh, well, I think you relate, saying to me, "Well, you have philosopher's disease." And for people who are good at thinking and have minds that, and then like to turn it over and figure it out, like it's the smart ones who have the most difficulty with koans.
It makes sense.
Because in every koan, sometimes there's something that's a hook. And the teacher would say, there's a hook. And if your mind just doesn't attach to that hook, you don't get caught by trying to figure out the koan.
Yeah, it makes sense. So, I'm sorry, one other last question, and it could be to both of y'all. So, because, like when you read the Ching, like like you flip through it, you ask it question. There's no there's no there. It you just run it through your own system and then see what kind of resonates and then have an emergent awareness or whatever. Isn't that the spirit of the thing? Like,
That may be. Why wouldn't that be one way? It would be.
Right. Yeah. But like if you do training like Chris is talking about, is that I'm so fucked right now. I mean, I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah,
So high.
now you get to it.
I'm like, I don't understand what's happening. It's probably pre-Jukai stuff. Weird shit happened to me before their ceremony too.
Yeah.
But yeah. I'm sorry, I'm really going to town on this.
Well, things are happening, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you talk about like living with it, turning it over,
Yeah.
inspecting it, like really exploring it. So maybe your first read, something jumps out at you, it hooks you in a certain way, and you pick it up, or a situation happens that you relate to it in a whole different way, or you think of it in a different perspective, and
It wakes you up in the middle of the night, it chases you somewhere to work.
yeah,
Suddenly
live
you
with it
realize it's
for a while.
pursuing you.
So Flint, I'm in a class every Wednesday and we're studying the Blue Cliff record with Matthew Sullivan's
Oh, yeah.
commentary.
Yeah, his is very unusual.
It's really interesting, but is that cheating? Because he explains all of the historical background and who the.
I know, I'm like, I kind of want to know now.
You know,
the Cliff's notes.
Because then some of us go, oh, well, then so-and-so was related and climbed a mountain and all that stuff. And I get it now, you know? Okay.
And getting it in terms of understanding what's going on is not the same as moving through the koan in the classical sense.
Okay.
It doesn't mess up anything.
Okay.
You do it.
You're a good student still.
I think my question is related, and son, you saying you're feeling disoriented, like that
Yeah.
is the heart of my question, and it's a how-to question, which won't have like an actual answer, but the like living with the disorientation. I really appreciate you sharing that, because it's it feels hard to live with what am I?
Yeah, if that
And
was
then
your
just like
constant,
keep doing your work.
yeah, if you're constantly in that, it's a little hard to like drive back to medicine.
Yeah.
It's not a steady state.
Yeah. Okay.
So you dip in and out of.
Yeah. Which I imagine there's skill to that.
If I'm ordering a Taco Bell, I'm not saying, what am I?
It's a burrito. Why am I here? What am I doing this to
But
myself?
it is relevant when you go to Taco Bell, because then you order what you want.
Yeah.
I love it.
You know what's your preference. And enjoy it.
Yeah.
And hopefully the enjoyment is part of the answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
You might even become the server at Taco Bell.
But so there
So
goes.
I'm never gonna hear the bell at the end of a Taco Bell
Now it's gonna be
commercial
this
the same
bell.
way again. This bell.
They say run to the border, that's
Or in darkness.
Shadow world.
But can I go to Taco Bell and find out what the hell grokking is?
Oh, it's a
Oh,
science fiction word.
Oh,
You entirely get it, but not mentally, like just embodied knowledge.
okay.
I
grok.
get it.
I so good. I just want to make sure I wasn't grokking all. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. It's from a book in like 1984 or something.
So I feel like that
Stranger in a
discomfort
Strange Land.
is so important. Like I have a history of migraines, and if I'm doing my analysis conceptual thinking, which is really fun for me because I really enjoy that.
Mm.
But I go too far, I literally will start getting like a migraine. And then I'll go, okay, slow it down, try another state of mind. And then I let go and something shifts and then I let in, it's like letting in other dimensions or opening an expansion, like more than 360. It's like you go big, right? When I learned COVID, I couldn't read, I couldn't make lesson plans, I could barely work. And so I would sit in the fog brain as part of my meditation. Just like let it be, go right into it. Just feel it. I don't want to be like this, but what if it never gets better? I want to know it. So it's just like not being afraid of any state of mind, but also letting it guide us, right? It's uncomfortable. We grapple with, we live in a long time sometimes. I sometimes live a headache for a long time because I'm struggling with something I can't open to yet, but then I'll open to it and then it's like my headache's gone. It's weird.
Yeah, and I usually intuit first and then I fall back on analysis if I can't intuit something. So I don't even know, do they work with that? I don't understand.
It's wrong.
Everything is included. Everything is fine.
Uh-huh.
Every direction is okay.
Fun. 12 years of koans.
Yeah, or don't worry about them.
Okay, that's also fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good luck.
They're just a way of manufacturing,
Com-
like you do with your games, for
Right.
one to use. Hopefully they'll be, it's like session, what Joko Beck used to call a session, retreat. She called them a manufactured crisis.
Yeah. But like benevolent.
Yeah. So I'm going to read something that reminded me of it. So great. This is our benediction before we go on to the next thing. And this particular translation is by a local boy, Ben Conley, from Minnesota Zen Center. And his book on this poem is really incredible, so I would recommend it. It's a Song of the Grassroots for Riches. It's a beautiful book. And this is a poem from the 8th century in his English translation. But I was going to read it through once. It's the page. But listen to every bit of what we've been doing.
Could you read it loudly?
I will do my best.
Thank you.
Yeah. I built a grass hut where there's nothing of value. After eating, I relaxed and enjoy a nap. When it was completed, fresh weeds appeared. Now it's been lived in, covered by weeds. The person in the hut lives here calmly, not stuck to inside, outside, or in between. Places worldly people live, he doesn't live. Realms worldly people love, she doesn't love. Though the hut is small, it includes the entire world. In 10 square feet, an old person illuminates forms and their nature. A great vehicle bodhisattva trusts without doubt. The middling or lowly can't help wondering, will this hut perish or not? Perishable or not, the original master is present. Not dwelling south or north, east or west, firmly based on steadiness, it can't be surpassed. A shining window below the green pines, jade palaces, or vermilion towers can't compare with it. Just sitting with head covered, all things are at rest. Thus, this mountain monk doesn't understand at all living here, he or she no longer works to get free. Who would proudly arrange seats, trying to entice guests? Turn around the light to shine within, then just return. The vast inconceivable source can't be faced or turned away from. Meet the ancestral teachers, be familiar with their instructions, find grasses to build a hut, and don't give up. Let go of hundreds of years and relax completely. Open your hands and walk, innocent. Thousands of words, myriad interpretations, are only to free you from obstructions. If you want to know the undying person in the hut, don't separate from this skin bag here and now. Who is in charge of all the setup?
Well, I would just like to ask that if you could take as much stuff with you when you leave here for the break, so you don't need to come back in a lot. We're going to be moving stuff around and it would just be easier.
You want people to move their seats back?
Yes, if you could.